Partnerships are delicate, Mr. Ryan. Sometimes they end violently.
We are compromised.
Oh, my God.
There's a very real scenario where we don't get out of this alive.
Where is she?
You think this is game, Jack?
It's a decoy. Tokyo, London, Shanghai. It's gonna be a wipeout.
Welcome back to Kermode Uncut. I want to show you something. If you look very carefully, you see this? See this here? This is grey hair. And I have this because I recently turned 50. It turns out that according to the studios, this is a bad thing. There's a new film out in cinemas, Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit. It's kind of reboot of the Jack Ryan franchise, directed by Kenneth Branagh, who also stars as the sort of the evil Russian nemesis. It's an interesting nuts and bolts film. I mean, it's not brilliant, it's not life-changing, but it's a good, solid piece of work, particularly if, like me, you have a bit of a nostalgia of a Cold War style thrillers. It's kind of like a modern Cold War thriller. And the interesting thing about it was that they cast Chris Pine in the lead role as Jack Ryan because they were kind of worried about getting the younger viewers to kind of connect with Jack Ryan, people who were too young to remember Hunt for Red October or Sum of All Fears or Patriot Games, for example. So the film opened in the US and did perfectly decent business. Not bad business, but, you know, not blockbuster, but pretty good business. However, there was a news story on the Monday after the opening weekend that said this. The studios were very worried. And the reason they were worried was because it turned out that a third of the audience was aged 50 or above. And this was somehow seen to be a negative thing. Like, the young people weren't making up the whole of the audience. There were people in the audience who were old. Now, whilst I understand that movie studios are endlessly chasing the teenage dollar, what exactly is the problem with a third of your audience being aged over 50? I mean, you look movies from recent years, The King's Speech skewed very, very old. Older audiences went along to see it. That's one of the reasons why at the end of the film people burst into spontaneous applause. Many of the people who went to see The King's Speech actually hadn't been to the movies since it was considered the right thing to applaud at the end of a film, or indeed stand for the national anthem. You look at Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. That was a film whose box office was largely buoyed up by the over 50 audience, by what is referred to as the grey pound. Now, in the case of the new Jack Ryan movie, somehow the studios are worried that the youngsters aren't getting it and it's left to the oldsters to understand the movie. This is a very new phenomenon. It never used to be the case that cinema was largely the domain of teenagers. In fact, in the great days of cinema, the golden days of cinema, audiences of all ages would go to the cinema and they were all seen as equally important. Nowadays, it seems, everyone is chasing not just the teenage vote, but the teenage male vote, which is particularly odd because in the golden days of cinema, women's pictures, as they were called, were far and away the most financially rewarding films. You know, I don't mind anyone going to the cinema as long as they don't use their mobile phone, as long as they behave properly and don't eat really loud popcorn. And you know, the section of the audience that's least likely to do any of those are the over 50s. Hollywood, when we turn out to see a film, be grateful. Don't complain. It's unbecoming.
Wow. It's magnificent.